I was about 10 years old, and I remember it vividly. I walked out the front door to my house in Yardley, Pennsylvania, where I grew up, on my way down to the bottom of the driveway to collect the Philadelphia Inquirer so that I could pore over the box scores from the night before's Major League Baseball games. And before I got more than a couple of steps out of my house, I noticed that my driveway had chalk all over it, and I couldn't really figure out what it was. And as I walked closer, I became terrified. I was horrified by the swastikas, by the writing dirty Jews, by the writing die Jews. I was 10 years old, lived in what I thought was a pretty safe community. And I stood there frozen, not really understanding what to do or how to react. And I went inside and I talked to my mom, and my mom talked to me that morning, really for the first time that I remember, about the reality of anti-Semitism, about the fact that some people's hearts are full of hate, and for seemingly no reason at all, that the Jewish people were the target very often of this hate. And understand, I'm hardly alone. Most Jewish people whom I know have been subjected in a real way, whether overtly or quietly or systematically, been subjected to horrible anti-Semitic behavior. Last week, the American Jewish Committee released its State of Antisemitism in America report, and the numbers are somehow simultaneously staggering and really not all that surprising. 91% of all American Jews feel less safe than they did last year because of attacks on Jewish people that have taken place over the last year. 78% of American Jews feel less safe in the United States because of the October 7th, 2023 Hamas terrorist attacks in Israel. 55% of American Jews have changed their behavior in some way out of the fear of anti-Semitism in the last year. 86% of American Jews say that anti-Semitism has increased in the United States since the October 7th attacks, and 31% of American Jews report being the target of at least one anti-Semitic act over the last year. Plain and simple, anti-Semitism is on the rise in the United States. There does not appear to be any end or even any slowing down. And from an organizational standpoint, we have to do better. We need to make sure that our Jewish colleagues feel safe and feel secure in our workplaces. And I want to talk about 4 steps I think we can all take without a great deal of effort, if we can just find some empathy, if we can find just a little bit more love and understanding in our hearts. First of all, familiarize yourself with some of the common forms of anti-Semitic behavior, stereotyping or microaggressions, comments that I still hear in a professional environment, in a mediation context. Well, that person Jewed the other person down, meaning they negotiated a lower price. Referring to somebody and saying they don't look Jewish. Can somebody please explain to me what a Jewish person looks like? Or for that matter, what a gay person seems like? Or for that matter, what a black person sounds like? These kinds of stereotypes, these kinds of microaggressions have got to stop. The more direct forms of anti-Semitism, the swastika carved on somebody's door, the kinds of statements that I shared with you that were on my driveway as a 10-year-old child that we hear, that we see every single day in the United States. Organizationally, from a leadership standpoint, we have to stand up. We have to prevent this kind of behavior, and when it occurs, we have to take swift and meaningful steps to correct it and to ensure it does not happen again. Number one, we need to familiarize ourselves with the more common forms of anti-Semitic behavior. Second, in my experience, most people don't know Jewish customs, don't understand how the Jewish calendar works or when holidays occur. And let's talk about holidays first in terms of what I think is the second goal, which is respecting religious observances. There are the high holidays that occur every year: Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, the Jewish New Year and the Jewish Day of Atonement, Passover, Purim, Hanukkah. These kinds of truly, truly meaningful and religious and important days in the Jewish calendar. And for the love of all that's holy, can we please stop scheduling meetings and stop scheduling events on these days? I cannot tell you the number of times I have had to have conversations with clients, or worse, with large human resources organizations, when they have scheduled conferences on Erev Yom Kippur, on the first night of Passover. Would you ever do it on Christmas Eve? Would you ever do it on Easter Sunday? We have got to do a better job of paying attention to what I'm hoping you have, some kind of a diversity calendar inside of your workplace. What about dietary needs? When you have a work lunch or a more formal event for dinner, do you provide kosher options at these events? These are small steps. A little bit of empathy, a little bit of understanding, a little bit of kindness. So we're going to familiarize ourselves with the forms of anti-Semitism. We are going to respect the religious observances that our Jewish colleagues celebrate. We're going to do our best, number three, to foster a more inclusive environment. Every time we see or hear an act of anti-Semitism, we are going to call it out, and we are going to have zero tolerance for that kind of behavior. We're going to support religious expression among our Jewish friends, our Jewish coworkers, whether they're wearing a yarmulke, whether they are wearing a Star of David. There's no mockery, there's encouragement, there's inquisitiveness, there's questions. Appropriate, the way you get to know the customs a little bit better. We're going to become more inclusive with our policies. Unfortunately, most organizations don't cease operations on Rosh Hashanah or on Yom Kippur, as these same organizations do for other kinds of holidays. At a minimum, can we ensure that we allow our Jewish coworkers, our Jewish employees, to have those as floating holidays so they don't relinquish pay, so that they don't get some kind of an unexcused absence for celebrating one of the holiest days of the Jewish year? And finally, and perhaps most importantly, we need to support and to show solidarity during the hard times. I can't tell you how meaningful it was to me after the October 7th attacks. The people that checked in with me, and I will tell you, there weren't many, but the ones that did, I'll never forget it. In these times of hardship, in these times of tragedy, check in. How you doing? Are you okay? How are you feeling? What can I do? One second, don't demand that your Jewish colleagues explain and or justify the actions of other Jewish Americans, of other Jewish people around the world, of, for example, the Israeli government. We are not monolithic. We don't all think the same. We don't all have the same sensitivities and sensibilities. We don't attribute the act of one to the act of an entire people. And finally, can we please acknowledge that Jewish people can feel pain? And can we stop with the competition of pain? And you've heard me talk about this before. A few years ago, there was a hostage situation in a synagogue in Cooley, Texas. The rabbi and several congregants were being held hostage by a lunatic. The FBI got involved, and fortunately, the rabbi and the congregants were able to escape unharmed. I was shook. And I went into work the next day, and I was still shook. And I remember having a conversation with a coworker of mine whom I've known for 20 plus years. And I said to this person explained to this person how I was feeling, and that I was uneasy, and that I was a little bit scared. And friends, I did not get empathy. I did not get kindness. I did not get understanding. What I got in response instead was, now you know what it feels like to be a fill-in other historically marginalized group. I wasn't saying that the pain that I was feeling was any more or less important or justified than the pain that that person had felt at other times during their life. I was just looking for a little love. I was just looking for a little understanding. We have to avoid this competition of pain. What can we do? One, familiarize ourselves with the common forms of anti-Semitism. Second, respect the religious observances and learn about them so that we better understand when they come up and what they signify. Foster this more inclusive working environment, and finally show support and, if possible, solidarity during those hard times. The American Jewish Committee's report, which again came out last week, wasn't terribly surprising. The numbers, while astronomical, while terrifyingly high, they weren't shocking. There's an awful lot of hate in this country, and of course it is hardly singularly directed at the Jewish people. We all have to do a better job of being available to those people with whom we work, to those people for whom we really should have responsibility. Sit down, ask how they're doing, listen, offer a helping hand, offer a piece of advice, offer a hug. Make sure they appreciate that you appreciate that sometimes things are hard, but in you, they have an ally unconditionally and without compromise. Friends, as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for commenting. Thank you so much for sharing. Hope to see you real soon.